Hi, this is David Carr, author of the RSVPMaker plugin. I'm using this opportunity to go through a few new features in RSVPMaker, particularly related to sending out invitations. So RSVPMaker is a general purpose event scheduling plugin for WordPress. You can organize all sorts of events, including online events like this one, advertise them on your site, and in the sense that we want people to come in and RSVP or register for these events, one of the things that's important is being able to send out invitations that make it easy for people to respond. So here's an example of an events listing in RSVPMaker that shows a calendar grid representation. There's little pop-ups for details about these different events. A lot of these are demo events. This one happens to be a real one, and it's promoted a little bit differently on the home page of the website. And we have an RSVP Now button. So what I'd like to be able to do is also send that out as an invitation to people. And do that by going to my dashboard and going into RSVP events. And one new option here we'll see is send invitation. So if I click there, it will import the content of that event post into the WordPress editor. It gives me a little bit of space to work with to add a custom message up top. And I can revise this however I want. I can work with the standard WordPress formatting tools. So it's somewhat similar value proposition to the basic events editor. With the events editor, we use the same editing tools as we do to create a blog, but we add the date and time and parameters that allow people to come in and RSVP. In this case, I'm creating an email message using these tools, and when I go out to view this, instead of being displayed in a standard page template, it's displayed in a special email preview template. So this is the content that would be sent out to my email list. And we can see that there's an option to send to a MailChimp list. And there are several that I've used for different projects over the years. I can also email the members of my website. Some people are running websites such as BuddyPress sites or any other kind of membership-based site where you're using the WordPress framework, but you give people accounts. You can send to the email addresses of all the people in that system. But that's meant as a convenience function for some websites that are organized that way. To send to a large mailing list, a large marketing list, you don't really want to be doing do-it-yourself code that I cooked up in my spare time. Neither do I. That's why I work with MailChimp, which has the advantage of having a nice API to allow me to do that. So in order to get, well, just to do a quick demo, let's send a preview. So when I check preview, it's just going to send one message to that one address. And we'll do send now. It'll do sending a preview. Otherwise, the message would be sending to the MailChimp list, and it would give you a confirmation code, or sending to website members. And this is what the message looks like when it arrives in my box. And I've got my RSVP now button. I click on that button, it takes me straight to the website. In fact, it takes me to the form, the sign up registration form associated with that event. So in order to get this all working correctly, there are a few parameters on the setup screen that you need to spend some time with. You need to go into the RSVPMaker settings and put in a username and password. I recommend setting up a standard SMTP mail account with your web host and using that. You can also use services such as SendGrid that provide, particularly if you're going to do any kind of high volume sending, it would help to have that set up. So this is for when the site is sending out messages of its own. That includes the basic confirmation message for somebody who RSVP'd for an event. This will give you much more reliable email delivery than if you require on the functions for sending email where there's no authentication. So you may have to futz with these settings a little bit. Obviously I have a fake password put in here because I don't want to show you my real one. But there's also a little test function here that will come back and say sending test email if that's working properly. And we can see that I just got a test email coming in. If something wasn't configured quite right, it would give me an error message there. So do that to make sure that you have things set up so that they're actually going to work. So, now I have two events for two menu options for two different types of content. RSVP events is where most of your events go. An RSVP mailer is where the mailing content goes. There's also two items right now on the setup screen. I'm probably going to make these two different tabs within the same setup screen eventually. I just haven't quite gotten around to that. So this is where we just set our basic parameters. In the mailer one, though, is where we would have to put in an API key for MailChimp. Obviously, you have to have an account on MailChimp before that will work. There's a link here to the article about how to get an API key from MailChimp, but it's fairly basic. It's just a string of characters that is supposed to be a little bit of a secret that gives the website a clue that this is a request coming from an authorized source. And we can tell that I've got this properly configured because it's coming back with a listing of all the lists that I have set up on that server, or with that service rather. Also, the email name and the email from parameters, they have to match a valid email account that you have set up through MailChimp, that they know that you're authorized to send from that address, that you own that address or control that address. You can also check this box that says subscribe new WordPress users to the list. So if you run a membership-oriented site, that would be something that would prompt people to confirm that they want to join your email list. There's something similar that you can do on the RSVP form, where you can set a checkbox that people are encouraged to click to sign up for your mail list. I think we can show what that looks like here. So this is an add me to your email list option on the RSVP form. And I got that by when I set up my form, there's just a checkbox here to say that I want that option to appear on the RSVP form. So one other thing is MailChimp has its own set of templates, and that's one of the attractions of the service. What I'm doing here is actually I'm submitting a full HTML document to the MailChimp service rather than using the templates that you have set up in your account. So this gives me a little bit more control of exactly how I want the document to be formatted. And if you know a little bit of HTML and CSS, you can see that there's inline CSS on these attributes that are setting up my background color for the page, then an area where the logo goes, and I have a logo image specified to be included. And then this code here is just going to include the content of that post, that bit of WordPress content that I am using as the body of my email message. So I can customize that however I want. One thing that's different about sending email as opposed to HTML formatting a standard web document is normally you have an external style sheet, or in the heading of the HTML document you have a CSS style sheet. For email, that information all has to be what's called inline. So it has to be inline, just like the code up here is specified right in the HTML. So in order to try and take the standard formatting that WordPress uses for things like image alignment, I've suggested a number of substitutions that you can make. So what this will do is go through, and wherever it sees align right as part of the tag, it will put in all this inline code here. So we're going to approximate the formatting that we would get in WordPress. We're going to make that part of our HTML document now for display in an email client. So again, this is something else that you would play with in terms of setting up your template. But that is what is giving me in the formatting that you see here in this preview. So we have just a pale background color specified, but you can make that really whatever you want. And again, the formatting of this image, since this is not in a standard WordPress context, meant to be used in a standard WordPress context, that's being formatted with that inline code that I mentioned. Now, one of the things that I'm using in this particular post actually is also some short codes. So rather than just entering content in the body of the message, I have a code that says include all my recent posts. And then right below that is actually my RSVPMaker upcoming short code, which is what we use to display either the calendar grid or the events listing. And the calendar grid is set to not be displayed. We have this visual representation here that tries to make it a little bit easier so we don't have to mess around with too much of those coding attributes. We can just fill out this form instead. So it says don't display the calendar grid, display up to 10 listings that are occurring over the next 4 weeks. We could also say limit by date only. So it's going to show any listings occurring in the next 4 weeks, regardless of whether they run over that time. Here I've set it to a specific category, but I can set it to none. If I update that and we were to view it, we would see this a little bit different. Instead of just listing my webinar event, it would list a few recent blog posts and then a bunch of these other demo events from the site. So play with this, ask questions, and let me know how I can make it better. This has gone through quite a number of iterations just in the past week. I was looking at the site earlier, seeing at least one thing that wasn't working quite the way it ought to be. And so I'll be working on correcting that. But let me know how you use it, if you're able to put it to good use, and how it can be made better. Thanks for your time.